Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's slightly delayed edition of Skwawk Talk on Socialist Telly. And I'm delighted to be joined by a panel of colleagues here to have a chat about what's been going on in the UK political world this week. And even more pleased that we have a first-timer on the show, the excellent Ems Rees from Wales. And he's going to lead us off now with the conversation about the... No, not really. I'm only winding him up because I know he was nervous about being on for the first time. So we said we were going to get him, and we just got him.
You didn't watch me now.
Welcome. So yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's same old, but please do bear with us because I'm sure it won't be that dull. But you know, there's been yet another disastrous week for Keir Starmer. It's been an appalling week by the Tories as usual, and which one is the most appalling is well, anybody's call, but we'll chat about that through the programme, and we'll be looking at some new developments on a bit more of a positive note as well as we go forward. So, Demo, do you want to lead us off with a little kind of summary of the last few days from your point of view?
Yes, have a little tantrum before we start, just to warm everybody up. So what can you possibly do to make things even worse for yourself after suffering the worst by-election defeat in your party's history? How about accusing Muslim voters of being anti-Semitic? That's the reason they're turning away from Labour. Hartlepool, I thought, was bad enough. The accusation there was that voters were somehow thick for not supporting Labour. Next came Cheshire and Amersham, where with just 662 votes, the second largest parliamentary party lost its deposit.
I've just got to crush you there 1 second, mate. 622. Let's not give
622. I do.
Yeah, they couldn't get that extra 40 votes.
It's so much better, isn't it? 622, barely being a lot. I think that's about the same number of actual members of the party in that constituency, which is just incredulous. But goes to show that when you stand for nothing, nobody's convinced by you, and nobody will come out and back you. And the voting population of Batley and Spen is something like 20% Muslim. And for an unnamed official to essentially say the only reason the party is losing here is because Muslim voters do not like Starmer's work on anti-Semitism, not quite sure what that work is that offends them. If it's contained in that Ford report, we're still waiting to see. Well, let's see it then. And if it's suspending Corbyn from the party that counts, well, fuck you, frankly. But to imply Muslims are inherently against Labour for this reason, and that's the reason Labour are losing in Batley right now, most publicly to a man who dressed up as a cat on reality TV, just shows how toxic and awful the party has become under Starmer. If officials believe they can make statements as disgusting as this, Starmer owes the entire constituency an apology, no ifs, no buts. And no lip service about Palestinian statehood is going to win them over in light of this either. What do you reckon?
What about you, Nicola? What's your take?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that they're sort of trying to distance themselves from this, senior aide that supposedly briefed the Mail. You know, if they want to distance themselves from it, they should name the person and distance themselves. But you know, they're just shuffling away and trying to distract us from the realities of what we know has been going on. I mean, it's pretty shameful, really. I think there was, I mean,
nobody's been sacked yet for it. So if they're trying to distance themselves from it, they're not trying very hard. And you know, I mean, Keir Starmer's shown himself to be not averse to a few sackings and reshuffles in the past few days, and you know, even managing to embroil himself in scandal as he does that, and you know, or would be if the media was prepared to actually do its job, you know, from a mainstream point of view, and point out to people what's really going on. So, you know, I mean, that's one of the big scandals of the week, actually. You know, that he's not only sat on the Ford report and continues to be delayed, but you know, he showed contempt for the Ford inquiry in the first place by reinstating members of staff as members of the party who had been accused in that report, in the leaked Labour report that Ford's supposed to be investigating, and they got reinstated before the report had actually come out, and still hasn't come out. And now we find out that in sacking his communications, well, I don't know if sacking is the right word, but removing his communications director, or the communications director left, jumped or pushed, not sure. the replacement is a former staffer who was seen in WhatsApp communications saying what a good idea it was that she approved of and endorsed for for the right wingers and the staff to set up this Ergon House project. And the Ergon House project was a project to secretly, and they were very careful to stress, this must remain secret and must not be noticed by Jeremy Corbyn, at the time the leader of the opposition, to divert campaign funds during a general election to protect right-wing MPs rather than be doing what the party leadership thought was needed for that money in order to try to win the general election. And again, I mean, this week has been characterised by quite a few, with Starmer struggling so badly, the various kind of bots, drones and sock puppets and whatever else that get put out to try to salvage him are accusing the left to say, oh, well, you're undermining the party. And, if you really cared about people, you would be supporting Keir Starmer. Well, I'm sorry, but, 5 years of absolute bollocks going on and total sabotage going on by the right, and much of it captured in the communications that were revealed in that report, makes that utter nonsense. And, I'm sorry, you don't get to suddenly claim protection on the basis of electability after spending 5 years of, intentionally destroying, in a lot of cases, the electability of the party and depriving not just the country, but hundreds of thousands of members who were working their socks off to try to get elected and actually working against that, as we know the right was. And in some ways, I mean, Keir Starmer is, his chickens are coming home to roost, karma, whatever else you want to call it, where we are seeing, the damage that was done to the party by him, among others, with the whole Brexit nonsense, is not as easy to undo. I think they just thought they'd swan in there, be seen holding a pint of beer. I won't say drinking a pint of beer because they never seem to touch it. Odd picture, holding a pint of beer, and everybody will just come flocking back after you spent 5 years telling everybody what a crap party Labour was. And it doesn't work that way. And he's absolutely gifted it to the Tories, and the Tories are getting a free ride. He's getting a free ride from the media by and large, but still managing to make the whole thing implode. So, Ems, you've had a chance to get your feet under the table now. I'm going to bring you in there and ask you for your take. Living in a country that is run by a Labour government, at least in part, and is certainly a lot more successful than its English or Scottish equivalents. Give us your take on what's happening with Labour in Wales and what it looks like across the border and what's going on in England at the minute.
Yeah, well, Labour in Wales is, I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but it's really good. We've got a brilliant leader in Mark Drayford, who's really doing progressive and forward-thinking things. And it feels good at home to be part of Welsh Labour. And I advertise myself to be Welsh Labour now rather than Labour. But yeah, he's doing great things. It's just sorry to see what's happening with the National Party. It's quite upsetting, really, and it's like what the opportunity Keir Starmer had, what he could have built on from what Corbyn had done, and he's just thrown it all away and almost wants to rewrite history. What can you say?
Yes, well, I mean, there was talk, if I remember rightly, in the media in the last week or so of Welsh Labour wanting to pretty much divorce itself from the Westminster crew. Personally, I find it hard to blame them for doing that. I live in Liverpool, and I'd quite enjoy if Wales could throw a loop out around Merseyside and the Wirral and put us all on the right side of the border, really. But I mean, what's going on there? Have you heard much about what the Welsh are planning to do to try and peel themselves away?
Well, I know one CLP have passed a motion. I think we might be talking about it in our CLP. We don't know yet, but it might be on the agenda. But I haven't heard of many other CLPs as yet. But CLP meetings tend to be at the end of the month, so hopefully we'll see a flurry of Welsh CLPs going for this motion. We'll see now. But I'd like to see that personally because we've a great leader. Mark Drayford's awesome.
He certainly makes certainly looks good when you compare him to somebody like Keir Starmer, for example. I mean, Starmer can expect support as much as he likes. He can moan that he isn't supported, but support works both ways. And Starmer doesn't support ordinary grassroots members, and especially not us on the left. So why on earth should he expect it in return? He's not going to get it. And if Wales are going to throw loopholes around Liverpool, and if they got any extra rope, then sling some across the Bristol Channel as well, by all means, and fish us into. Yeah, the reshuffle. Is it a reshuffle? Is it just a massive sacking? It's Starmer blaming other people for his own shortcomings again, isn't it? That's what it fundamentally amounts to. I mean, it's a huge list of people that I think you covered over the last month. He's lost his executive director of comms, his chief of staff, his chief advisor, chief press officer, parliamentary private secretary, shadow chancellor, Labour chairperson, and now, of course, his head of communications, who was a private healthcare lobbyist, and really very, very funny chap to find in the Labour Party, quite frankly, with beliefs such as that, has been replaced by somebody who featured in that Labour Leaks report endorsing that Ergon House fund. And that fund, arguably, those funds that were being diverted away in 2017 could have been the difference between where we are now and us being, 4 years into a Corbyn-led government, potentially. Absolute travesty.
Has Starmer got anybody left to blame? I mean, he's literally. Is there anybody left in his cabinet that he can?
Lefties. It's us. It's us. It's always going to be us. It'll be the buck will be passed to whoever's convenient, and he's been battering us for long enough to pass the point of way past the point of forgiveness. Frankly, there will always be a scapegoat for him, and I think he will always find a scapegoat, because I think they're desperate to hang on to him, to keep him in place until conference, where they can prevent anybody from the left ever becoming leader of the party ever again. And I think it's quite important that if he does fail, as expected in Batley and Spen, that he is taken out before they have a chance to hold a conference and do that. We're already seeing from CLPs across the country that the delegates for conference are being stitched up in places, and Southwest, for example, Nicola.
Yeah.
You can go on to that one. You know far more better. You can speak more eloquently on that one than myself.
Well, there was initial admission from the right, wasn't there, this week, that from some anonymous source to one of the usual friends of the right among the journalists, saying that Keir Starmer's job now, as the right sees it, is simply to stay in position until they get a chance to change the leadership rules to make sure that no left wingers can get back in. And that just about sums up what they spent years, these people, whining about supposed kind of bullying from the left, and how dare anybody try to deselect a hardworking MP and all this kind of stuff. And then as soon as they get in, they just go for it full on, and don't even try to pretend that they're not conducting a purge, really, which is funny. But it has been interesting. I've seen people comment on how Starmer has essentially folded like a deck of cards under the slightest bit of pressure after the years of crap that Corbyn took, and some people are understandably taking a bit of glee in watching him fall apart. But we saw this Jenny Chapman, who was his closest advisor and considered by a lot of people to be unsackable, and she commiserated with one of the people who'd been removed and said, well, he's still part of the team. And then, a couple of days later, she wasn't anymore. So, Nicola, I think I cut across you at that point when you were just about to talk.
I was just going to say, putting aside his 10 pledges, which he's not honoured, he also stood on, what was that poster? Integrity, unity, and something else. I just find it astonishing that they're still trying to push this unity line, and they've just, they've been purging socialists. They've, they insulted, the black community. What did they describe? Black Lives Matter as just a moment. That was Keir Starmer. And now, this atrocious, sort of briefing on Islamophobia, that was Islamophobic. And they still can't get out ahead of it. I mean, I'm ashamed of what the party stands for at the moment. And I just feel, people say, well, why don't you leave? And, we have centrists in my CLP that sort of act as if we should be leaving. But it says democratic socialism on the card. I'm in the right place. They are not. And, they're pushing people out, You know, they're pushing out the BAME community, they're pushing out socialists, and they're moving us to the right. And they don't seem to have any policies, any direction, any vision. What is there to vote for? I mean, if you can't trust the leader of the party to respect their members and the team working around him and to honour the democracy within the party, how could we possibly trust him in government? You know, I mean, it comes down to that. You know, he doesn't keep his own pledges and he doesn't uphold, you know, the democracy within our party. I don't trust him. Why would I get behind a leader like that? I wouldn't.
It takes some doing to break every single one.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, Eastern Lefty has commented as well, and we'll come on to ordinary left in a little bit. But you know, stronger together, or as the Guardian put it, stronger together. And it was amusing that, yeah, I mean, the vast majority of attention that Stronger Together did get was about people pointing out that it did nicked Hillary Clinton's campaign thing when she, you know, disastrously let you know, Donald Trump in as president in 2016. And you know, but the thing that really got the conversation going was Stronger Together, with the misprint from the Guardian. That you know, that was much more interesting to people than any idea of Labour trying to come up with some new focus grouped slogan or whatever. So it is disastrous. I mean, you know, it is interesting that, you know, the latest pollings come out, and you know, there's been another 7-point net loss from Labour to the Tories, with you know, the Tories gaining 3 and Labour losing 4, if I remember rightly, and being 14 points behind in that particular poll. But we have seen as well with the, if I can just find the right page here, yeah, Keir Starmer. You wonder what he's in it for, because this is what he said in 2017 when people were tipping him to be the next Labour leader. Winning elections is all I'm here for. That's why I came into it. If that's all he's here for, what is he still doing here? Because there doesn't seem to be, you know, he's certainly not winning, and he's you know, going from, I said to somebody, you know, last week, it's starting to look like Hartlepool, which was considered a disaster only just over a month ago, might well be the high point of Keir Starmer's tenure as Labour leader, because we had the worst ever by-election result for Labour in Chesham and Amersham, with 1.6% of the vote, and just about the number of, I'm not even sure if every Labour member did vote Labour in that election. And you know, expected to get a tanking in you know, in Batley and Spen next week as well, and working to try and reverse that by insulting 20% of your voters over there. It's pretty shocking. I mean, let's talk about the Tories for a minute, because you know, they're a crap show as well, and we've seen the Tories trying to you know, divert attention from their institutional racism to you know, by talking about white privilege and the disadvantages of white working class boys in school. And as lots of people have pointed out, when did the Tories ever give a toss about white working class boys, except when they can either whip them up into some kind of racism or use them as an excuse to justify the racism that's already going on. Ems, give us a bit of a chat on that, would you?
Right, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
It's just shocking, absolutely shocking stuff. I don't know what to say about it, really. It's beyond. It's absolutely beyond.
Jump in, everybody. Feel free.
Well, white privilege. I mean, how many Tory leaders have come from a position of white privilege themselves? I mean, how privileged do you get when you come through Eton and Cambridge, and you've got the most toffee-nosed background imaginable, a background so detached from ordinary working class lives that it's little wonder they run the country the way they do, because they simply have no idea how ordinary people live. It's an absolute insult to our intelligence, frankly, that they think they can talk about white privilege as if they aren't beneficiaries of it. It's ridiculous. And when we come to education, I mean, white working class pupils have been let down for decades by the neglect in the English education system. It's an appalling situation that's been going on for years and years and years. The schools have been continuously underfunded, and teachers have been more and more put upon, especially throughout all of this COVID crisis. And it's always the mainstream schools that are the ones that are most badly affected. It is not these places like Eton, which is a charity, which is bizarre in and of itself. But it's also a public school. It takes in wages, and actually, Eton was set up for ordinary working class people. So its very existence these days is an offence to ordinary working class lives. White privilege is what twisted Eton into what it is today. And yeah, it's risible. It's disgusting, frankly, that they've got the brass neck to go on about this the way they have. But they're Tories. They're never short of brass neck.
Nothing changes, though, over the decades as they've stripped away Sure Start centres, school meals, and anything that's sort of tried to sort of level up society. In the meantime, they're distracting us by, with this divide and rule. One decade it was, demonizing single mothers, and now it's it is different communities that they're pointing the finger at, all as a distraction to that they've actually stripped away the safety net, and that gave some of these children a chance in society. But yeah, what have the Tories actually done, to actually improve that situation? They keep talking about levelling up, but they've taken away pretty much every safety net for those children.
Well, levelling up to the Tories is a bit like, it was with them with, this whole idea of, they stopped measuring child poverty, for example. Their way to solve child poverty, stop measuring it so people can't say how bad it is. And, they'll do something similar on these lines. Or when they took the living wage and said, or the minimum wage and said, oh, great, well, we've got a living wage now. And all they'd done was rename the minimum wage, which wasn't anywhere near a living wage. So, and cheered themselves in Parliament for thinking of such a clever idea to con everybody with. And, I saw a really good thing on this idea of the white privilege, because, people arguing against that, the government trying to argue against it and blame even just the use of the term white privilege for the disadvantaging supposedly of these working class lads. And, they said, look, white privilege doesn't mean you can't have a hard life, and it doesn't mean you haven't been disadvantaged. It just means that the colour of your skin is not one of the things that has contributed to that. And that's the additional factor that goes on there. And they were pointing out things like the fact that black women have something like 4 times the mortality rate in pregnancy than white women. It really is woven into the fabric of stuff, and we have to start unpicking that. And it goes on again, and the Tories will instantly leap on any dog whistle racism that they can if they think it's going to help them. So we've seen, as Kailash Chandiya is pointing out in the comment, whether Islamophobia in the Labour Party, and obviously always ongoing in the Tories as well. But then, the heroes in the NHS during the pandemic have suddenly become, these bloody foreigners who are there, and there's too many of them, etc., etc. And, I saw a quote that somebody worked out how much it would cost to train English doctors to replace all of the foreign doctors or nurses or whatever that were, that are doing fantastic work in our NHS. And it was 42 billion. So, you could easily set up a national care service, for example, with that amount of money. But, the Tories will never miss an opportunity to fan the flames of prejudice if they think that it's going to serve their interests, And it's a dog's breakfast in the political scene, because we haven't got proper opposition at the moment who are prepared to actually call stuff out.
They're talking about sort of filling these vacancies when the Tories have been in power 11 years now, and how many? Somebody remind me, is it 120,000 vacancies we've got in the NHS, doctors and nurses, that they can't fill?
I've seen figures of 88,000 and 100,000, so I'm not sure exactly what, but a lot. You get about a 10% shortfall in staff in the NHS on its overall complement.
160, 170,000, sort of foreigners working within our NHS. So if they're looking to replace those, it'd be good to start with the ones they've been pledging to replace for the last decade or more.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I think, was it 500,000 to train a doctor?
Yeah.
Yes, and 5 million people at the moment, waiting for treatment more than they're supposed to be waiting. And obviously the government trying to use every excuse from the pandemic or whatever to excuse that nonsense, but also then use that as an excuse for driving further privatization, as though taking money out of healthcare for private profits is going to help anything, you know.
And then the nurses bursary, and then I saw, is it John Trickett that said today, he came up with, I can't remember the statistic, the number of our highly trained medics that then go abroad to work or go into the private sector, and yet there is no taxation for those private firms, when they actually, steal our talent from the NHS, that, taxpayers have funded their training.
Yes. This is an interesting one. The waiting list grew from 2.4 to 4.4 million in England in 10 years of Tory government before the pandemic. So what's their excuse for that? They really don't have one. I mean, already well before the pandemic, it got to the point where the Tories had announced that they were going to stop measuring the effect of the winter crisis every year. Again, because, if it's not being measured, people can't talk about it, and therefore, it's not really happening. And that's the Tory approach to improving anything. It'll be exactly the same.
Coming back to racism again, our NHS was founded on internationalism. From its inception, we've had sort of foreign-born workers in there. I think it's like 14%, and we all owe our lives and our family members' lives to. We've all got stories, personal stories about some of. I know I wouldn't be here but for the NHS, and a large number of those people that saved my life and got me back to living again we're from other countries, and the attitude that we've got now, I mean, look at them through the pandemic, putting their lives at risk on the front line, and many of them lost, in fact disproportionately so compared as I think the Philippines had the highest toll out of our workers. I mean, and to come out with statements like that, I mean, it's so insensitive. It is racist. It's
dog whistle politics again. Yeah. It's finding somebody for the Tories to essentially point the finger of blame at when they need a distraction. Because of course the Tories don't have to ever defend themselves on anything, frankly, because the media will always protect them, will always guard them, will always let them off easily. And when it comes to this business with foreign doctors, we simply couldn't sustain the NHS without them. And it's not just doctors, it's members of staff at all levels in the health service. We could not have a functional NHS without them. And we've all got stories, as you said. I published a story of my own on Twitter the other day. My wife nearly died in childbirth with our youngest one because there was complications there. He was born 9 weeks early, 3 pounds 4 ounces. My wedding ring would have gone around his wrist. He was that tiny. And the guy that called it was a Sunday, so they don't have full complement of staff on a Sunday. He decided something had to be done. It had to be done there and then, had to be done now. He saved both their lives. The guy was Egyptian. It's ridiculous that people are being condemned because of where they're from, rather than praised for their ability and their training and how wonderful and clever they are and how fantastic it is they chose to come here. Yeah. And if we're going to talk dog whistle racism anyway, I mean, we've talked about Labour and Islamophobia already tonight, but what about the Tory Islamophobia investigation that all 4 leadership candidates way back when said they would launch and investigate? Whatever happened to that? Nobody asks anymore, do they? They go away with it.
How insulting. You are one of those foreign workers that had to work on the front line, in the early days of the pandemic and still, and you put your life at risk, or if you're a family member of somebody that lost their lives, sort of looking after us, and then you hear this tripe coming out. I mean, I'd be raging. I mean, these people have, and I'm not just talking about NHS workers, actually, it's right across, we've got bus drivers, we've got people, on the front line, that have kept our society, moving and looked after us all through this. And then you have the government come up with tripe like this. I mean, it is disgusting. And even the leader of the Labour Party has not come out really and condemned them. How can he when, what's going on his own watch.
We expect Labour to be better. That's why we give him such a hard time.
Well, that's, I mean, at the moment, it's got to be the political equivalent of shooting fish in a barrel, or whatever the phrase is. You know, that you literally could kind of stick a thumb in and come out with a fish on it, and of Tory misdeeds, incompetence, corruption, whatever else, and he just won't. He won't say anything, and he's got himself in a position now where he can't say anything because he's in such chaos himself. And a response to that, which we'll come on to now, as a bit more of a positive development, a lot more of a positive development, really. But a response to the lack of genuine opposition at the moment has been the formation of this new organisation or group, whatever the word is for it, Ordinary Left, as Damo's got behind him there. And I'm going to pop a little kind of banner on there now, or a bit of a logo in honour of that, because we're talking about them now. And some of our shows on Socialist Telly go out as Labour Left, or have done previously, but the reality of it now is that within this, the nations of the UK, there's probably only Wales where people wouldn't feel a bit ashamed to own up to being Labour. You've got this kind of shy Tory thing. Well, the way they're going at the moment, we'll end up with shy Labour people. And if you're in Scotland, Labour's name is mud, and a lot of lefties wouldn't have anything to do with the Labour Party. In Ireland, a lot of left-wingers won't be able to join the Labour Party because they don't kind of organise there like that. In Wales, it's doing a bit better. In England at the moment, they seem to be actively trying to drive as many people out as they possibly can. So Ordinary Left rather than Labour Left. And the point of that, some people have said, what's that about? What's the name about? It's about ordinary people's not an insult. You know what I mean? We're not up ourselves. We're not full of ourselves. We are down to earth. We know what life's about. We know the price of a loaf of bread and a pint of milk, and we know what it's like to worry about, an unexpected bill coming in and all that kind of thing. We're the people on the left that should be driving this movement, because we're what the movement's all about. When 1906, I think it was, when Labour got its Labour MPs at 29, and pretty much all of them were people like steel workers, miners, shoemakers, all that kind of stuff. And, now we've got PPE students or whatever it is, and all that, politics, philosophy and education, or whatever whatever those things even stand for. And it's all the people who go into politics because they want a career in politics, not because they know that life needs to be improved. And I think that's so the Ordinary Left thing has coalesced really out of that. I mean, a little bit in reaction to unions stitching up candidate stuff. We've got a weird situation in Unison going on at the minute, which we'll talk about presently. But people going, hang on, this is enough. This movement is powered by us, and we are going to stand up and start making a noise, organising to demand that it gets run in that way. So there is. I'll pop it up on here if I can find it. If you want to register an interest in Ordinary Left and keep up with what's going on, essentially a newsletter list there to join to find out what's happening in the first instance, then you can register there by going to bit.ly, /Ordinary Left News, and that'll take you to a Google form where you can drop in your details. And the other one, where if you want to, there are a lot of regional accounts as well, so don't forget to look for those. But if you want to follow Ordinary Left on Twitter, it's just Ordinary Left on Twitter. So find those, follow them, and let's, it aims to be a genuinely democratic bottom-up movement, and is really only interested in having people in it who want a genuinely bottom-up democratic movement. Nicola, give us your thoughts and experiences on that so far, please.
Yeah, I know, the name Ordinary, we've been pushed, that there's this sort of, I found the right of the party have wanted to portray the left as being hard left trots, as if we're some extreme. And I love, this Ordinary Left, because this is what we are. This is representative of what our party stands for. These are ordinary working people, who want a better life, a better society. The policies and that we want are not extreme policies. They're policies that benefit everyone. We know from the last election, not the result of the election, but the response to, because it really wasn't a referendum on our policies. It was a referendum about so many other things, but our policies are very popular. And so I think we should reclaim that and reclaim the left and exactly what it is. It's not hard left, it's not extreme left. You know, we're democratic socialists, and we are ordinary. You know, we want ordinary things in our lives. All the things that the Labour Party's fought for, weekends, holidays, workers' rights, that's what we're looking for everybody. And we represent the majority of our society. So let's proudly claim that. And we've all been frustrated getting behind parties and getting behind candidates in various elections to be let down. And I love what this organisation is doing now, because we're going to be picking candidates and policies and issues that are representative of what socialists stand for, and not getting caught up in the baggage of, you know, the machine within these organisations.
Very good explanation, and ordinary left thinks so too. I mean, you know, one of the ways I've looked at it as well is in a kind of, it's the opposite of the blue tick left. So you get the little blue ticks on the social media accounts for, you know, particularly on Twitter, for some of the people who, you know, consider themselves the trendy left, and one of them did actually use that term last week as well, and say, yeah, we are the trendy left. And you think, well, you know, what if you're not interested in being trendy? What if you just want to be down to earth? You know, what if you don't want a blue tick? You just want to, you know, talk about real life to people, and you know what real life's about. Then you know, that's what ordinary left is about, really. And you know, and some of its accounts they're called grassroots left, but you know, ordinary left is the handle that people will recognise and sets itself apart. So I think that's the kind of you know, the summary. I would really encourage people to get involved in that, because we, you know, God, people need something positive at the moment to get the teeth into, and actually to coalesce around and organise for, you know, something better, rather than simply trying to, you know, cope with or stave off the disaster that you know, the blue tickers and some of the other people that they support are you know, desperately trying to foist on us and make us think that we can't have anything better than that. So East and left is saying, yeah, no blue ticks. I think that's the that about sums it up. So Ems, your turn.
Yeah, when you think about it, the ordinary people, it's, you know, in the campaigns you get in your communities, the people who are fighting against school closures or fighting against library closures, the people who are on the ground, they're the ordinary people. And so why can't we be the ordinary left? It's great. It's fantastic. You know, it's the ordinary people who are in the food banks helping people out. You know, the socialists are helping people out. It's the ordinary people who are looking after their neighbours and stuff like that. So I think the name ordinary is fantastic, and it sums me up, and I love it.
And as a Labour Party member, you know, when the things I expect the party to stand up for, like NHS 15 pay rise, you know, and when our leader won't even get out behind, you know, those basic things and stand behind, you know, sort of, you know, firing around. I mean, they make that. We hear a lot of platitudes, but when it comes down to it, you know, they shuffle around and they won't actually, you know, they won't actually deliver on it, you know. So you know, they either abstain or they avoid. So what I'm loving about this is we're, you know, picking and choosing, you know, what is worthy and 100% getting behind it, because the party's just not doing that for us at the moment.
Yeah. Demo, you've been quiet for a couple of minutes. Not like you.
All right, it's unusual for me, isn't it? Right, you know, I just think, hang on a minute, let's think back. We put together Socialist Telly for a start because we wanted to be a voice for those people on the left that aren't really enamored with the people who are allegedly providing a voice for us now. And you know, we are just ordinary working class people. We, as you say, we know the price of a loaf of bread and the cost of a pint of milk. But this movement, this ordinary left thing, it's all about politics and policies that benefit all of us. It's not about blue ticks. It's not about the cool left. It's not about Oxbridge careerists. They might want a blue tick. I want to end food banks as a necessity in this country. That's the difference. And I want to do that. I want to work towards achieving that. And people up and down this country want the same thing too. So why not get everybody together under one banner and unite our efforts and be our own opposition when opposition parties and opposition leaders have let us down repeatedly. It's not even a Labour thing. Labour has let us down terribly certainly over the last year, and as a history of not, doing what it was set up to originally to do, and that is stand up for working people. So let's forget about party politics. Let's forget about blue ticks. Let's forget about all these mouthpieces who think they're important, and actually just get together ourselves and talk about the things that actually are important, the things that affect our everyday lives, making them better, the sort of things we were all inspired to think about and believe in under Jeremy Corbyn, for example, and carry on with that fight and carry on where he left off. Let's all be Jeremy Corbyn here, because that's what it amounts to. We can all stand up. We can all be that man, that guy, that socialist, that lefty, that person that's going to talk about these issues that we believe need to change. And we all set up accounts here, there, everywhere, every corner of the country. There's loads of them already. Actually, this has sprung up really, really quickly. So let's run with it.
Here, Demo. Here.
And I mean, I'm just looking down. I'll put it up on the screen. But looking down some of the Ordinary Left Twitter feed, it gives you a bit of a flavour for what's going on. So we've got anything from just solidarity with the LGBTQ plus community, and calling out racism in Hungary, and showing how the Germans used a bit of style to show them up. Comment there on the trend of the doctors we talked about earlier on, being the ordinary left, a tiny cog in a big wheel. Leaders being silent in the face of injustice, and those who prefer silence are not fit to lead. Solidarity with hospital workers going on strike, ecology stuff, so environment, etc. And then attacking the racism that the Tories are using now, trying to put the blame for the NHS problems on foreign workers and this kind of absolute nonsense. But a lot of that came out of the this reaction against the stitch-ups that have been going on in union elections, etc. And one of the bizarre things that's been going on in the last couple of weeks has been the massive result for the left in the union national executive elections, taking a huge majority on there with their real change slate, etc. But the person that is now the president of the union is not allowed to officially do that role, because the right wingers within the union stitched him up during their general secretary election last year in order to try and make sure that he couldn't win that, and he came close. But there's some yet another kind of I hate to use this term centrist, because nothing centrist about it. It's right wingers got a hold of that, but then the left reacted back and said, the membership said, hang on, we're not having this. We'll put ourselves a left NEC in. And the two vice presidents are women, and they're both allowed to take up their roles. And the presidential team is run now by the left, but the actual president of the union, Paul Holmes, is not allowed to act yet as the president. We did try to get him on tonight, but he couldn't come on because of it. Because of right wing machine politics, trying to make sure and we're seeing that far too commonly across a lot of unions as well. So it's originally was union members saying, hang on, we want proper democracy in our unions, not the backroom deals version, and it's spun out from there into a wider thing. So I mean, what's that? The Unison is I think numerically biggest union, second biggest donor in the Labour Party at the minute, and I think it's a huge deal who is having the influence on that, and yet already we're seeing that the crap that goes on from the right is doing everything they can to nobble, just like in the Labour Party, trying to nobble actual grassroots influence and make sure that it stays in the hands of a small number of people. So anybody a Unison member here, or anybody want to got a relative who works in the NHS or something and is a member and wants to say what they think about what's going on there?
Well, not a Unison member, but obviously they are the main union of the health service, and every one of us relies on that health service, and it's quite important to us what goes on here. And isn't it funny that left-wingers can get elected when they actually stand on a platform for something, but it's right-wingers that have to get up to all sorts of shenanigans in order to retain power. You can see the difference between them. There's nothing moderate, there's nothing centrist about this. These are people that want to hang on to power for power's sake. It doesn't matter whether it's a trade union, this trade union, whether it's the Labour Party, it's the same pattern everywhere. It's the right-wingers just want to hang on to power. They want to be the ones left in charge, and balls to what they're actually supposed to stand up for and exist for and work for. And it's ordinary members that miss out and suffer. And it's absolutely disgraceful the way they behave there. Paul Holmes, he's been on this show numerous times. He's a lovely guy. He's always got a story to tell. He's always tells you everything exactly how it is in ordinary layman's terms. He doesn't hide behind waffle or anything like that. But you know, he's done nothing to deserve to be treated like this, except know his stuff and be left wing. And again, this comes back to why ordinary left is formed. Again, it's not just even party politics, it's trade unionism here as well, which, yes, it's political, but it's also industrial. And this sort of nonsense benefits no workers, benefits no community members, be it Unite, for example, and it's got to stop, it's got to end, and we've got to call it out. And that is part of what ordinary left will be striving to do going forwards as well.
It's been very inspiring seeing all of the different ordinary lefts spring up across the 4 nations, you know, the regions, and from the grassroots. And, you know, for example, on the 3rd of July, we've got this NHS rallies across the unions. And it's that, you know, that somebody, you know, from the grassroots comes forward with something and then people run with it. There's none of this, you know, backroom dealing. Do you know what I mean? It's what we believe in. And it's spontaneous, and people get behind it. They give it a platform, and the coordination and the, you know, the strength of our collective, you know, is very, very powerful. And to see, do you know what I mean, what's been achieved just in a matter of days has just been astonishing. And I think that's what we all need, because we're all feeling very disillusioned and untrusting of parties and unions at the moment, because of all these backroom deals that go on, you know. But to actually take that power back from the grassroots and to be able to collectively come together and put our efforts, you know, into wherever it's needed.
Yes, so we've got a question in here from Paul Smith, which is probably a good one. Who we're referring to as the blue tick left? You know, I don't think we should name names on that. I think people, by and large, are aware, you know, but it's the weather vanes. It's the people who, you know, swapped from being Keir Starmer, from being Jeremy Corbyn supporters to suddenly telling everybody that they should be supporting, you know, Keir Starmer, and then, you know, flipping on that again, and then pretending that, you know, as if they'd never said that was a great idea once it turns out to be a disaster. It's the people who, you know, will respond to yet another atrocity, you know, on the part of the Labour right, by suddenly talking about Gramsci or Camus or some other kind of philosophical thing, you know, and pontificating about stuff and loving the sound of their own intelligence, but not actually saying anything meaningful that people can engage with. You know, it's that kind of, you know, it's the ones who look down their nose at what they will call the cranks. And, you know, and ordinary left is a bit of a pushback against the idea that, you know, if you're a normal working class person who is on the left politically, and by on the left politically, I mean, wants a public NHS, wants decent public services, wants the vulnerable looked after, wants people to get a fair day's work, pay for a fair day's work and all that kind of stuff. Nothing radical and earth-shattering, just normal fairness. And they'll look down their noses at people like that and, you know, congratulate themselves on how cool they are, essentially. So, you know, pick a person with a blue tick, and if they're doing that, they fit. You know, there'll be people with a blue tick who don't fit that profile, and that's fine. You know, a couple of years ago, we had the gammon thing. There was people talking about, you know, is gammon, using the word gammon, racist? You know, because it wasn't about a skin tone. It was about an attitude that maybe sometimes coincided. And, you know, blue tick is a bit that kind of thing, really. So that's the...
Frankly, anybody on the left who uses that term crank, essentially, as well.
Labour
They might as well, frankly.
He said we're not understanding politics from the correct Marxist viewpoint, and he's laughing. But there would be people who would come out with that sort of thing and expect everybody to bow down and go, "Oh, you've read Marx, you must, we must defer to your opinion." Common sense socialism, that's coming there from People Power 2024. Paul Smith has named somebody, but I'm not going to put that name up on the screen because it wouldn't be fair when they haven't got the right of reply. But if you are remotely involved in politics on social media, you don't have to think too hard to think of any person who fits that blue tick summary, let's say, of their shorthand for their politics and proneness perhaps to U-turn and flip-flop on a fairly regular basis, or to have a condescending attitude to ordinary people. And again, ordinary left is a badge of honor to be. It's nothing ordinary about being ordinary in that sense. It's the people who stick to their principles is quite an extraordinary thing, really.
Yeah.
Thesaurus left, People Power to put here as well. I like that one. That's less words and more action. Yeah, all for that. So I think we're kind of winding down. At the end of the show, we'll get through any more comments that are coming in. People are enjoying the thesaurus left. Maybe that's a good alternative. If people don't use the social media, don't necessarily know what a blue tick is. Thesaurus left will probably, assuming they know what a thesaurus is, of course. But the wordy left to sound intelligent rather than be intelligent. If you can't communicate your ideas in simple words to people, then you're probably not as clever as you think you are. I think that's about the size of it, really. So, Nicola, let's
like that, isn't it?
Yeah, Nicola, we'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we'll let Ems have the last word on the show, seeing as it's his first one, and he looks a little bit less panic-stricken than he did at the beginning when I said he was going to be starting the show. We'll let him finish it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask people if they just do a search on their social media for all of the ordinary left accounts springing up across, regionally, and follow and support them, and communicate the issues that you think that we should all be getting behind. And this is a grassroots thing, and it's I think we've been fed up of waiting for direction from the party, or picking candidates or policies that we expect to be backed up on, and then we're let down. So let's just get out there and do it.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of people saying, "Oh, who's behind this?" And they want there to be a big name behind it, and it's not. That's not the point. The whole point is it's not about big names. It's about ordinary people getting stuck in and making of it what they want to make of it, really. So, last couple of minutes, and then we'll wind up and let people get on with the rest of their evening.
Yeah, basically going back to what you've been saying, it's like, for me, it's when the whole Corbyn project started, we were all on the same level. We were all grassroots starting at the same level, and a few of them have gone and formed platforms, and now they're on their platforms. They don't want to hear what us grassroots want to say anymore. What we say is not important anymore. Or as I said, we got cranks then because it didn't count in their narrative. So we're ordinary, and I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's the there were people halfway through Jeremy Corbyn's tenure who were already talking about Corbynism without Corbyn, because they were wanting to move on to the next thing and extend their influence or whatever. And especially that kind of people, that's who we're not. And we don't want to define ourselves by who we're not, but that's, if people are a bit confused, that's one way of looking at it. And we're about, we could say real left, authentic left, whatever else you want, but grassroots, bottom up, democratic, and actually trying to get some stuff done and organise against the overall trend at the moment, which is capitulation and compromise, and the Labour Party trying to out-Tory the Tories, etc., and not doing even a good enough job of that, and therefore bombing in the polls. We want to give people something real and something with a bit of hope about it, and I think that's what it is. Everybody who's watched, I do thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. If you're watching on catch up, thank you again for doing that. Do spread the word. Do make sure to do the clicky bits and hit notification bells, whatever else on your preferred social media platform, so you keep up with the Socialist Telly output. Do give these guys a follow on. You'll find Ems Reese, is it on?
Ems the Socialist.
Ems the Socialist on Twitter. Nicola, you're NAJ562.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Cornish Demo's Cornish Demo. I'm on as Skwawk, and but importantly from tonight as well, make sure you follow Ordinary Left on Twitter and find your nearest regional representation of among the Twitter accounts as well, so that you can get plugged into what's going on. And as that grows, you'll get a chance to play your full part in what it does. Everybody, again, appreciate your time. Hang in there, stay positive, and let's make something happen. Take care.
No, everybody.